10 spine-chilling small-town horror tales, revealed unexplained terrors that haunted lives. Clover Hollow wasn't just small, it was a tomb cloaked in smiling faces and friendly waves. The kind of place where every coffee consumed has a story, and every fry served is laced with secrets. Sarah, a weary 33-year-old single mom, worked the grungy night shift at the local diner where the chatter dripped like spilled soup and unease lingered in the air. She gripped the coffee pot tightly, its heat barely numbing her cold fears. The clock ticked like an ominous heartbeat in the dim room. Outside, rain slashed against the fogged windows, a curtain hiding something that lurked just beyond sight. That night, patrons filled the diner, ignorant or uncaring of the mounting shadows lurking in their town. Sarah overheard snippets, whispers about another man who had vanished, the name slipping through the air like a ghost. Last seen near Oak Street, one voice said, trembling. Good Lord, how many more? The words chilled her to the core, every sense screaming that Clover Hollow had become a cage. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were all being watched. Just as she turned to check on Lily, her 6-year-old daughter coloring at a corner booth, a stranger stepped inside. He was draped in half-shadow, eyes glinting with predatory curiosity. Do you ever feel like they come for what's rightfully theirs? He asked, his voice smooth yet graunchy, like creaking floorboards. Panic clawed at her throat. Was this a joke? They were too personal, too unsettling. Sarah shook it off and turned her focus back to the customers, but her heart raced. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The next morning, as light crept through the curtains, she realized Lily's favorite toy was gone. A sick knot twisted in her stomach. Inquiring her neighbors yielded nothing but tight-lipped smiles and dismissive waves. Oh sweetie, you worry too much. They say, but their eyes darted elsewhere. The old woman next door, with her stories of lost times, was missing too. This wasn't paranoia, this was a town gone blind to its own rotting core. Sarah could feel it, something was hunting them, and she couldn't tell where the threat began or ended. Fury bubbled under her skin as the diner gleamed with the laughter of customers, oblivious to the danger weaving through. But as she pieced together the night, a pattern emerged. Those who vanished were connected by ties of trust, and now they were all too quiet, too compliant. The diner's atmosphere shifted, thick with tension. The regular banter felt offensive, and time seemed to conspire against her. Just as she gathered the nerve to bring her findings to someone she thought she could trust, the lights flickered, and every face turned toward the door. A soft tapping scratched at the kitchen window. Heart pounding, Sarah froze. Was it hope or terror? She stepped forward, breath hitching, peering into the abyss outside. No other choice remained. Was it salvation waiting outside, or had the darkness finally come for Lily and her? She had to know who really was safe in Clover Hollow. The wind howled like a wounded animal, rattling the old window panes. Sarah squinted against the night's gloom, her breath catching in her throat. Outside, the rain fell in sheets, obscuring the view. Whatever was out there, it remained hidden in shadows, and the tapping came again, frantic now, insistent. Lily, she called, her voice trembling. Stay where you are. Her daughter's crayon clattered to the floor, ice-fingered silence replacing the buzz of conversation. The diner was suddenly a tomb, and Sarah felt every heartbeat thrum against her ribs. With caution, she reached for the door, her fingers trembling. She pulled it open a crack, a thin sliver revealing the tempest outside. The air was thick with mist, swirling like lost souls, but nothing stirred in the wet night. Just beyond the threshold, a figure clung to the wall, half hidden behind a dumpster. It looked like a child, drenched and shivering. "Lily, come here." She thought of her daughter, alone in that booth, and her heart raced. The figure lifted its head, revealing gaunt cheeks and wide, haunted eyes. "Help me," it croaked, voice barely audible above the rain. Panic twisted Sarah's gut, mixing with the desperate hope of rescue. She opened the door wider, taking a step out. "Are you?" A sharp gust of wind drove the door back against her, nearly knocking her down. The child stumbled forward, catching itself on the diner's step. It was then that Sarah noticed the dark stains on its clothes, soaking through the fabric. Fear snaked around her legs, anchoring her to the ground. "What happened?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. She tried to sound calm, to draw in the lost child, but dread twisted her words into shadows. I need to go home," the figure whimpered. "They took my brother. They look like us." Sarah's breath hitched. How could they look like them? She felt bile creep up her throat. Where have they taken him? She could barely contain the urgency in her voice, knowing full well the weight of these words in a town like Clover Hollow. The child's eyes grew wide, feverish. "Oak Street. They come for the ones who listen to the quiet." Suddenly, voices erupted from within the diner. Bewildered patrons were rising, murmuring amongst themselves, a clash of confusion intensifying. They couldn't see the truth right in front of them, the threat wrapped in innocence. And she couldn't fully grasp it either, but she felt the looming presence like a shadow over her shoulder. "Sarah! What is going on?" One of the customers shouted, straining to see through the pouring rain. "I need to help, but help wasn't easy." The child, drenched and shivering, echoed her thoughts with wide, pleading eyes. Just then, the diner's lights flickered again, plunging them into darkness before flickering back to life, illuminating the faces of townsfolk filled with something unsettling. And the child, where had they gone? Cold sweat slicked her skin as she turned. The booth was empty. Lily was gone. Panic surged through her, pulling every muscle tight. "Lily!" The diner's laughter returned, bleaker now, tainted with a sense of wrongness. Every friendly face turned to her, smiles stretching too wide, the laughter too loud, shadows dancing behind the eyes. "Help them find what's lost," someone murmured from the corner. "We can help you." Suddenly, she felt it, a knot of fear growing larger, tightening around her chest. The warmth of her daughter was gone, and as her breath quickened, she whipped around, searching the quiet diner in a whirl of desperation. What had she invited into their lives? Who was safe in Clover Hollow? As she pushed past conflicting thoughts, something from the back of the diner caught her eye, a flicker of movement, where it shouldn't be, behind the kitchen door. Was that Lily's giggle? Sarah took a step toward the sound, heart racing, not knowing if she was walking toward salvation or doom. But she couldn't stop now. She had to know what was lurking in the shadows. As she approached the kitchen door, Sarah felt a chill seep into her bones. Where Lily had been laughing only moments ago, now there was an eerie silence that crept through the diner like smoke, thick and suffocating. She paused, heart thrumming wildly in her chest, every instinct screaming at her to turn back, to bolt from that wretched place, but Lily was just behind that door. "Lily!" She called again, her voice trembling, barely masking the tremor of fear. Nothing responded but the persistent pitter-patter of raindrops tapping against the window. The diner patrons seemed to hang on her every word, their expressions morphing into grotesque masks of delight and anticipation. A low murmuring started up, a haunting chant that rose and fell like the tide. She must go in over and over again. Their voices were soaked in an unsettling harmony. As the flickering lights cast chilling shadows, she swung the kitchen door open, fear pulling tight at her insides. What lay beyond was darkness, so thick she could hardly discern shapes. She stepped inside, feeling the cold linoleum beneath her feet, slick like ice. The smell of grease and something burnt hung heavy in the air. "Lily?" From the depths of the darkness came a sound. A giggle, sweet and innocent, but something about it felt wrong. It twisted the core of her being. Sarah hesitated. What if the laughter wasn't her daughter's? She clenched her fists, her nails biting into her palms. Not like this. The shadows shifted, and suddenly she saw it, a small figure darting past her, its movements quick and jerky, too fast to be human. Her skin crawled as it stopped, momentarily illuminated by the humming fluorescent light above. It was a child, with hollow cheeks and skin that seemed to flicker like candlelight, and its eyes, they were dark voids, sucking in the light around them. "Help us," it chimed, sweetly. "We've been waiting for someone to listen." The horror wrapped tight around Sarah's throat. This wasn't Lily. It was something else, something deeply unnatural. She gasped, retreating back into the diner. The patrons had stood up, now forming an unsettling circle around her, grinning with anticipation. One stepped closer, its voice smooth and cold. "You heard the child, Sarah. They won't come back until you let them in." "Let who in?" She breathed, her mind racing. Panic morphed into helplessness, but no answers came. They were waiting for her to decide. The diner's lights flickered once more, the shadows lengthening, twisting as if alive. Whispers curled around her, mingling with the sound of thunder, drowning out her thoughts. "Mommy." The voice was unmistakable, Lily's. It came from behind the diner's counter, rising above the wave of murmurs. In that instant, fear and relief battled within Sarah's heart. "Lily." Without thinking, Sarah sprinted toward the sound, her determination overriding any remnants of fear. As she rounded the counter, the kitchen door slammed shut behind her with lethal finality, and an ominous hush fell over the diner. This wasn't the playful giggle she remembered. Lily stood there, her hair matted and dripping, her smile wide but her eyes hollow, the same dark voids as the child from moments ago. "Mommy, I found them." She squealed delightfully, her voice reverberating like nails scraping against glass. In a heartbeat, Sarah's heart shattered at the sight. Her daughter was lost, standing in the gathering storm of shadows. Around her, the circle of patrons began to step forward, their grins widening grotesquely as they reached for Lily. "Help them find what's lost," they echoed, their unholy chorus a chant rising up to the rafters, drowning out any hope. Desperate and trembling, Sarah stumbled back, her mind racing. What price would she have to pay to reclaim her daughter and escape this nightmare? And in the depths of despair, one question thudded relentlessly in her mind: was there salvation buried among these beings, or was she doomed to lose Lily forever to the shadows? Something ahead shifted quietly, but this time, it wasn't just the patrons. The deeper darkness in the diner stirred, threatening to unwind a horrific secret. Sarah found herself at a crossroads where every choice could lead to a perilous fate. What horrors lay behind those shadowed corners? She had to know. The patrons closed in, their collective smile a grotesque imitation of joy, eyes shimmering with a dark hunger. Sarah's mind raced, desperate to find a way out, but every inch of the diner felt like a trap, the walls closing in as if the very building had become sentient. "Lily, come away from them!" Sarah shouted, her voice trembling. But the shadows that enveloped her daughter seemed to pull her closer, like tendrils reaching for something they craved, something that belonged to their twisted realm. Lily's laughter echoed, mingled with the warped grins of the patrons. "They're my friends, Mommy. They want to play." "Play?" The word felt alien, festering in Sarah's throat. "No. They're not your friends. They want to take you away." The radius of their murmur swelled, a dark tide rising. "Help them find what's lost, help them find what's lost." Each repetition resonated like a dirge, and Sarah felt the walls pulse, the very air in the diner growing thick and cloying. She reached for Lily, fingers trembling as she fought against the encroaching shadows. "I want to let them take you." Each word tore from her throat, filled with determination, yet every instinct told her she was losing a battle she didn't even understand. Suddenly, an ear-splitting crash rang out from the kitchen. A pan fell, metal clanging against the floor. For a brief moment, the diners recoiled, their horrid smiles faltering. Sarah's heart surged with hope. Was this her chance? Lily! Come on! She lunged forward, grasping her daughter's wrist. But the moment her fingers wrapped around Lily's cold skin, the girl jerked back, her expression shifting to one of confusion and resentment. "You're hurting me!" she cried, her voice piercing through the murmurs. The circle tightened, pressing in, their breathing quickening, almost excited. "Let us take her. Let her find us." A wave of despair crashed over Sarah. She couldn't leave Lily to their cruel intentions. But as she looked into her daughter's shadowed eyes, the void that consumed them seemed to whisper, pulling on the edges of her sanity. They weren't just asking, the patrons seemed to believe they were her only hope. "Please, help us find what's lost." The voices rose again, a guttural chant that swirled around the diner like an insidious fog. "Stop!" Sarah bellowed, her voice echoing off the diner walls, drowning the chant in her fury. "You will not take her." But in that moment of defiance, darkness spilled from the kitchen, a thick cloud that snaked around her ankles and clawed at her resolve. The sound of thunder boomed outside, and the rain beat heavier against the windows. Sarah shivered, a cold sweat breaking across her skin. Then, she caught movement in the kitchen. A shape loomed, amorphous and yet distinctly human, emerging from the shadows. It stumbled forward, drenched like Lily but radiating a feeling of decay and despair. It was the face of a mother, the body of a lost soul, her eyes crying tears of darkness. "Help us," it croaked, reaching out toward Sarah with a lingering, wretched touch. Find me," terror twisted in Sarah's gut. The diner patrons fell silent. They stepped aside, forming a path from the shape to her, a passage drenched in shadows. "Who are you?" Sarah whispered, instinctually stepping back, but her feet felt like stone, rooted to the spot. The figure smiled, a rictus of agony, revealing rows of jagged teeth. "You know me, you'll remember something within." Sarah clawed at the edges of her mind, trying to grasp long-buried memories as the air thickened with dread. "Mommy!" Lily cried again, her voice small yet insistent. "Sarah," the figure echoed, sounding hauntingly like a past she couldn't escape, a dawning realization flickering in and out of focus. What was lost was coming back to life, and as the walls of the diner pulsed, Sarah knew the depths of their longing held there the true horror of the night. With trembling breath, she had to decide. Fight to keep Lily, or succumb to the din of voices calling them home. What awaited her on the other side of that decision? Would she unlock truths better left buried, or would the shadows claim both mother and daughter? And just then, the lights flickered violently. Was it a sign, or a warning? The light dimmed, then flared. Shadows danced wildly, illuminating twisted faces that hungered for something beyond understanding. Sarah felt her heart slam against her ribs, the sound of frantic drum echoing through the growing silence. She had to think, but her mind was a whirlpool of chaos, panic clawing at her throat. "Mommy, I want to play." Lily's voice was a chilling sing-song, tainted with an understanding that felt wrong. The figure in the dark, was it her mother? No, her mother was gone, lost long ago to the insidious grasp of despair. But this echo of the past appeared so familiar. It beckoned with that same haunting warmth that had once enveloped Sarah in comfort. "Find me, Sarah. We're just waiting to be found," it declared, a mix of sorrow and malice that pulled at Sarah's resolve. She didn't want to remember, didn't want to dig up those ghosts. The patrons shifted closer, elbows brushing, breaths quickening as if the air buzzed with excitement. They whispered in unison, "It's time, it's time, it's time." The chant slithered through her mind, wrapping tightly around her thoughts like a serpent ready to squeeze her sanity until it burst. "Lily." Sarah's voice cut through the murmurs, desperate and sharp. She pulled at her daughter's arm, fighting the urge to flee, to abandon this cursed place. But Lily felt heavy, as if the shadows themselves were weighting her down. The figure smiled wider, showcasing teeth that glinted like dagger points. Come, remember, what have you lost? The memories were like pages torn from a diary, fluttering to the ground. She could see them: her childhood, her mother's laughter, the warmth of summer nights. And beneath it all, darker memories flickered: loneliness, despair, the very essence of their shared sorrow. It twisted inside her, a raging river turning against her heart. Help us, the figure echoed, eyes wide with longing. Wave after wave of darkness erupted from the walls, pulsating as if the diner itself were alive, feeding on fear and dread. The patrons grinned, their faces warped into grotesque masks that promised an eternity of anguish in exchange for just one more soul. The lights flickered again, dimming the world around them, and for just a moment, Sarah felt a slip of hope. She could still fight back. "We're leaving," she shouted, lunging for the exit, dragging Lily with her. But the door wouldn't budge. It was glued shut, locked by unseen hands. Panic rose in her throat like bile. Help them find what's lost. The diners roared, the chant swelling to a crescendo. A surge of energy shook the diner, tables rattled, the windows trembled, and just as suddenly, the lights blinked out completely. Darkness swallowed her whole. It was thick, the kind of dark that pressed against your skin, whispered in your ear, promising solace only if you succumbed, gave in. "Mommy?" Lily's voice was small in the blackness, trembling. "I'm here, sweetheart." Sarah's voice wavered. She couldn't see, couldn't breathe, only felt talons of fear screech on the surface of her skin, waiting, and then came a scream, a long, high-pitched wail that sliced through the thick air. It wasn't Lily. It reverberated, echoing off the diner's walls, filling every inch with pain and terror. The sound faded into silence as the lights flickered back on, revealing the diner transformed. The patrons stood unmoved, yet somehow they were closer now, their faces twisted and ghastly, right in front of her. She could see them clearly. They didn't seem human anymore. "Who are you?" Sarah gasped, voice trembling. The screams had stopped. Some patrons had vanished, as if swallowed by the shadows, or were they taken? And then she felt it, the ensnaring pull at her daughter's wrist. The shadows flickered like hungry mouths open wide. The walls of the diner vibrated with anticipation. Would they claim Lily? What had she lost? The figure's laughter rang out harshly, a melody of despair laced with triumph. "Find us, Sarah. You'll remember. You'll join us." Breathless, frozen in horror, Sarah stared into the abyss, uncertainty clenching her throat. Would she reach into the darkness to save her daughter? Or would the shadows pull them both into a past that should never be rekindled? In the trembling hush, one question echoed: where did the lost truly go? The shadows thickened around Sarah, wrapping tighter as she struggled to pull Lily to her. Her daughter seemed entranced, swaying slightly, eyes wide but unseeing, lost in a fog that enveloped her mind. "Lily, please." Sarah tugged again, desperation creasing her voice. "We have to go." The diners were no longer just patrons. They were twisted creatures, their smiles splitting broader, eyes gleaming with an inhuman hunger. They reached for her, fingers elongated and claw-like. The words spilled from their mouths like venom: "Join us, find what's lost." Something deep within Sarah clawed back, a flicker of madness ignited by the fear of losing her child. She had to fight. With every ounce of strength, she pulled at Lily, breaking the trance. The air hummed, vibrating with an unbearable static that stung her skin. The patrons resonated with anguish, their forms distorting, bending into grotesque shapes that made Sarah's stomach churn. In confusion, Lily blinked. "Mommy?" "Yes." "Focus on my voice," Sarah shouted, pushing through terror that threatened to drown her. She felt the oppressive weight bearing down like a storm, thundering, swirling, demanding her submission. "Help us," the figure whispered again, but it was louder, almost anguished. Suddenly, the walls began to pulsate with life, moving as if they were breathing, in and out like a predatory beast, wanting to consume. The diner felt alive, pulsating with a sick, dark energy. "Help us in the darkness," they all chanted now, unison and melody, an unsettling lullaby that scratched at Sarah's mind. "No!" she shouted, sending the word rippling through the chaos, desperate to reclaim her daughter from the dark abyss. "We're not helping anyone. We're leaving." The air grew thick, the density pressing against her chest until breathing became a labor. She could feel shadows creeping along the floor, tendrils of darkness reaching toward her, gnawing at her legs. A searing panic erupted, awakening her fight-or-flight instincts. Then, the lights blinked, flickering erratically, and for a brief moment, clarity returned, illuminating the horror of twisted faces, and the chaos was replaced by a deafening silence. "Now!" Sarah urged, seizing the moment. She yanked Lily toward the door again. With all her might, she slammed her shoulder against the wood, ribs rattling with the force, and suddenly the door shocked her back, flinging her into the diner. "No!" she gasped, grappling with trembling fingers, seeing the lock writhe like a serpent beneath her touch, sinister and mocking. "Help us!" The call echoed, louder now, fierce and insistent. The diners advanced, their hands reaching out, grasping, hungry. "Don't listen to them!" Sarah cried, her heart racing. She felt the warmth of her daughter's hand slip through her fingers, and dread surged within her. Frantically, she turned to see Lily being drawn back toward the figure that pulsed with dark energy, beckoning her closer. Mommy Lily's voice trailed off, glazed eyes drifting toward the twisted form. In that moment, a mantra flared in Sarah's mind: memories are cages, but also keys. She thought of her mother, of the open kindness, and the laughter born of sunlit days. It sparked something deep within her, a whisper of hope challenging the suffocating darkness. "Remember who you are, Lily," she called, fighting against the tide of despair. "I'm here. You're safe with me." The figure recoiled, its expression faltering. Sarah surged forward, pulling Lily back toward her, desperate to anchor her child to the real world. Suddenly, a cacophony erupted. The shrieks of the lost screeched through the diner like claws carving deep into her psyche. The walls shook violently, splintering, rattling under an unseen force. The light waned again, dimming dangerously, keeping them trapped in limbo. "And this is where it ends, isn't it?" whispered the figure, slithering closer, extending a shadowy hand. "Not if I can help it," Sarah shouted, instinct propelling her forward. But time was slipping. Would they be swallowed whole by the shadows? Or could she pull her daughter back from the brink? Whatever it took, with a final push, she wrestled against the phantoms, the weight of despair crashing onto her shoulders. She clutched Lily tight, digging her heels in as every muscle strained against the coming darkness. But as the air crackled, crackling with intense energy, she wondered, was this the end, or the beginning of something much worse? Sarah's heart thundered in her chest as she felt the darkness closing in, a suffocating embrace that seemed intent on dragging them into its depths. She tightened her grip on Lily, feeling the fragile warmth of her child's hand slipping even as she poured every ounce of love and strength into her hold. "Lily," she shouted, her voice a raw cry against the monstrous whispers. The unsettling chant clawed at the edges of her sanity, trailing fingers of ice across her spine. The air buzzed with tension, the energy shifting from oppressive silence to a roar that echoed all around them. In an urgent flash, Sarah's eyes darted around the diner, glancing at twisted faces that lacked any semblance of humanity, each mouth a dark cavern howling for her submission. The walls seemed to vibrate with their unmuffled desire, the floor throbbing like a living thing under her feet. "Stay with me," she begged, the words tumbling out in desperation. "You're my little girl, remember our stories. Remember the fairies and the dreams we chased." Her throat tightened, and fear gnawed deeper. Would her memories be enough to pull Lily from the edge? The dimness stirred, cascading shadows forming tendrils that seemed alive with wicked purpose. They swirled around her ankles, tugging like children holding fast to their mother in a crowded field. Sarah's breath quickened as she recognized the very real danger. They weren't just shadows, they were hands of the lost, trying to claim them both. No! She bellowed, forcing her way through the tide of despair crashing around them. A new determination surged inside her, igniting her senses, amplifying her drive to escape. Lily! Another push against the void, shoving her daughter's dazed body toward the fleeting light by the fractured door. The figure loomed larger, blackened hands extending with the promise of familiarity. It seethed, the voice dripping with allure. "Join us, Sarah, you'll never feel alone again." Sarah could feel the pull, almost seductive, like a lullaby sung from a place that promised peace. But she shook her head violently, the thought of abandoning Lily barricading her mind against the terror. "I won't leave you." She screamed again, fighting every instinct to surrender, every whisper trying to drown her in shadow and memory. With a savage roar, the shadows lunged forward, an avalanche of darkness threatening to swallow them whole. But Sarah's mind crackled with clarity as she recalled not just memories, but also love, the essence of who they were. "Lily!" She cried again, "Remember the sunshine? The way it felt against your skin?" Lily blinked rapidly, the glaze in her eyes lifting as if Sarah's voice cut through the heavy fog, sparking something familiar within her. "Mommy?" It was a whisper, a chance. "Yes," Sarah urged, pulling her daughter closer. "Grab my hand. We don't belong here." Suddenly, the tendrils snapped at her like whips, inflicting searing pain as they attempted to draw Lily back into their grasp. "Come home," the creatures hissed, "let the darkness cradle you." The decision loomed before them like a dark door. Would they choose the painful fight for life, or surrender and find peace in darkness? Sarah felt a shift, a swell of hope radiating from within her as Lily squeezed her hand tightly, eyes clearing as recognition surged back. The walls trembled around them, the chanting growing more frenetic, desperately seeking to pull them apart. "Now, Lily! Together!" Sarah insisted, summoning courage she wasn't sure she still had. With renewed strength, they pushed against the swirling chaos that threatened to engulf them. The air crackled, tilting towards victory or doom. The floor rumbled beneath their feet as the darkness roared in fury, fighting to reclaim its lost prey. As they stumbled toward the door, shards of splintered light flickered, illuminating the grotesque shadows behind them, a monstrous tide, a hunger unquenchable. But the door was so close, it felt like salvation, a sanctuary beyond the stylings of madness. Would they break free, or find themselves engulfed in eternal darkness? The line between escape and embrace was razor thin as the chanting shifted into a desperate wail. Just as their fingers reached the door handle, an icy breath ran down Sarah's neck, and a voice echoed chillingly, "It's not just a choice between here and there, you are already ours." Against the shadows, the mother and daughter seemed to shine brighter, but as the handle turned the world trembled, and darkness roared to reclaim them one last time. Would this truly be the end, or was it just the beginning of their nightmare? As Sarah's fingers gripped the handle, a surge of energy jolted through her, turning her heart into a drumroll of pounding dread. The door felt cold beneath her touch, but the moment she twisted it, darkness flared with rage. "No!" A chorus of voices screamed, clawing for her consciousness. The shadows wailed, a guttural sound that scraped against her skin. They pulled at her soul, desperation palpable as they fought to keep their prey. "Push!" Sarah gasped, throwing all her weight against the door. With a deafening crack, the door swung open, revealing a blurred corridor of light that beckoned them like a siren. It felt unreal, oscillating between threat and shimmer, each breath reflecting the poison of uncertainty. "Mommy!" Lily cried, tears streaming down her cheeks, her little body trembling alive with fear and hope, but just as they stumbled forward, the ground heaved violently beneath their feet. The shadows rushed in a desperate claw, seeking to reclaim what they deemed theirs. Sarah yanked Lily through the threshold, the darkness swarming against them like a feral beast, wild and hungry. As they crossed into the light, they could feel the shadows receding, their piercing wails disappearing into a suffocating silence. And then it all came crashing down. The door slammed shut. The light flickered and dimmed, but they weren't safe yet. A painful pulse reverberated in the air as if reality itself were shuddering at their audacity to escape. "Where are we?" Lily whimpered, looking around in awe-twisted fear. The diner, warped and unrecognizable, stretched before them. The walls were adorned with pale masks, each face a grotesque mask frozen in terror. Instead of comforting booths, strange alcoves materialized, housing unnaturally still figures, thick with a ghostly hush. They appeared trapped visions of the lost, forever caught in a purgatory that taunted Sarah's sanity. "Stay close, Lily," she cautioned, scanning the eerie stillness. A creeping realization sunk in: they weren't merely in a different place, they were threaded deeper into the dark heart of their nightmare, and those creeping shadows had merely retreated momentarily. A faint rustle sounded from the shadows, pulling at Sarah's instinct to flee. Her heart raced again as she tightened her grip on Lily, but the girl felt weightless, her eyes drawn to the chilling tableau around them. "Mommy." Lily's voice trembled, thin and almost ghostly. "What if they find us?" "I won't let that happen," Sarah said, teeth clenched. Yet doubt crept into her mind. And then, from the far corner, a figure emerged, the very embodiment of darkness. It slithered, shape-shifting, its features indistinct yet familiar enough to send icy fingers curling up Sarah's spine. "Sarah," it crooned, an alluring voice heavy with malice. "You should have embraced the gift, the comfort we offer, the peace." The figure rose, revealing a piercing gaze, empty but swirling with hunger, a void that threatened to swallow them whole. In that moment, fear erupted, expanding in the chasm between them. Sarah realized this was not just a fight for survival. It was a challenge, a sinister proposition to join the unyielding. "Stay back!" she roared, the very essence of her love splintering from her heart to shield Lily. "We are not yours." But the darkness merely laughed, a sound hollow and echoing. "Oh, sweet Sarah, it is too late. You are already entwined, already part of our world." As the figure advanced, shadows lunged forward again, pulling at Sarah's very being, the air around them thickening with dread. Could she withstand the pull? Would she unravel, or find the strength to fight back against the grasp of the unfathomable? With thunderous shadows creeping closer, inexorable and terrifying, she faced the truth: this nightmare was far from over, and as the darkness danced alive, it whispered promises that undulated like smoke. Could they escape this second layer of horrors, or would they find themselves eternally trapped in a vicious cycle of despair? The shadows swirled thicker, more insistent, their cold claws clutching at the edges of Sarah's mind. She could feel Lily's tiny hand quivering in hers, a lifeline in the growing despair. Her breaths became ragged, the very air around them heavy with palpable dread. The figure was stalking closer, every movement deliberate, every inch a promise of horror. "Lily, we need to move," Sarah urged, her voice a harsh whisper. Panic surged through her as reality twisted into a grotesque mockery of safety. She tugged at her daughter, and together, they stumbled deeper into the diner, away from the slithering darkness, but the diner was a labyrinth of despair. Every corner held a strange alcove, every step echoed with a dreadful finality. The mask-covered walls seemed to shift, their painted smiles transforming into grotesque frowns. Faces of silent agony stared at them, and the air pulsed with their muted screams. "Mommy," Lily's voice trembled again, "they're watching us." Bile rose in Sarah's throat. The hidden figures, she realized belatedly, had no eyes. They were devoid of life, yet anchored in the space like thoughtless shadows. Were they warnings? Were they comrades long lost to this netherworld? She gritted her teeth and dragged Lily further, desperation igniting her every step. "Don't look, sweetheart. Don't look at them." Suddenly, a crash from the back of the diner shattered the thick silence, reverberating through the air like a death knell. This time, it was not just rustling from the shadows, it felt alive, pressurized, as if the very diner itself was convulsing under their presence. "Run!" Sarah yelled, her instincts screaming as they beat their way toward the sound. The otherworldly laughter followed them, echoing through the warped halls, mocking her every frantic move. Adrenaline coursed through her veins, but there was no time to waste. They turned a corner, and what lay before them was an impossibility: a huge glass wall, shimmering with reflections of their own terror. On the other side, a dark abyss stretched endlessly, the shadows roiling like a storm. "My God!" Sarah breathed, staring at the moving void. It was both terrifying and mesmerizing. But as she turned to grab Lily's hand, something cold snagged her wrist. The shadows had taken form, gripping her tightly, squeezing the very essence of her being. "Mommy!" Lily screamed, yanking backward as Sarah felt herself being pulled into that malevolent void. "No!" she shrieked, clutching Lily's wrist tightly, fighting with every ounce of her being. The figure from earlier manifested, grinning now, its face a grotesque mask of perverse joy. "Let go of her!" Sarah howled, heart racing, the chant of hopelessness filling her mind, but the darkness had no compassion. With every thrum of desperation, Sarah sensed the filaments of her consciousness fraying as dread clutched at her heart. It was a battle for the very soul of her child. The figure whispered soft confessions, seductions laced with darkness. "You could have peace join us." For a split second, despair enveloped Sarah, and the delicious promise of surrender tugged at her. But she saw Lily's trembling form, the innocence radiating in the harsh space. She could not, would not relinquish that love. With a feral roar, she summoned her last crumbling defenses and pushed against the weight of despair. "We don't want your twisted peace. We'll fight." In an explosive surge of strength, they broke away from the grasp. The shadows howled like wild banshees, retreating momentarily as the glass wall reverberated with the clash. But as they gasped for breath, the edge of reality reassembled around them, and the diner started to ripple, a warped mirage. Then Sarah turned and gasped, seeing more figures emerging from the void, faces she recognized: friends, neighbors, people she had lost. "Sarah!" A familiar voice echoed, hollow and tragic. "Help us!" Spirits swarmed, reaching against the glass, their souls trapped in a desperate dance of anguish. Should she turn back? Should she risk everything for lost souls? "We can't stay," Lily whispered, clutching her mother tightly. The siren call of the lost reverberated, each figure beckoning for rescue. Tears streamed down Sarah's face. The choice hung there, heavy in the air: leave or fight. And as the shadows receded only to reform in a sinister mass, Sarah faced the horror anew. Which path to choose? What awaited them next, lost in the deepening taunt of this nightmare? Before answers could emerge, the glass shattered, and a surge of darkness swarmed again, pulling at them with ferocity. Would they fall into despair or find a way back? The question loomed as the diner trembled, spiraling into chaos. The darkness roared like an erupting volcano, shattering every semblance of safety. With shards of glass raining through the air like angry teardrops, Sarah whipped around, grasping Lily tightly as the phantom figures pressed closer, pleading and crying as they reached out for help. "Mommy!" Lily screamed, her voice echoing against the chaos, and Sarah sensed the panic swell inside her chest, every breath becoming a battle. "Hold on tight!" she yelled, dragging her daughter forward even as the shadows slithered after them, eager to reclaim their lost treasures. Sarah's heart thundered in her ears, blending with the cacophony that pulsed through the diner. It felt like a fever dream. Each step turned the ground to quicksand, and the air thickened, forcing her to fight for every inch of ground. They darted past faces that twisted in agony, echoes of lost souls caught within the glass wall. But their cries shifted into a chant, laced with malicious intent. "Help us! Help us!" It struck at Sarah's heart, but she couldn't afford the luxury of empathy now. She had to protect Lily. On the verge of collapse, she veered down another hallway, heart racing, and there, at the far corner, flickering in and out of existence, was a doorway that shimmered like a beacon. There! Sarah yelled, hope igniting within her, chasing shadows away momentarily. We can make it. But the diner's walls moaned with rebellion, the shadows tightening their grip. They hissed like wild winds, clawing at the edges of Sarah's sanity. Join us, they implored, their voices thick with hunger. Just a bit further, she urged, her legs screaming in protest. With every ounce of resolve, she hurled herself and Lily toward that gateway. Keep your eyes on me, she commanded, and she felt a spark of defiance igniting in her marrow, but as they reached the door, a thick fog rolled in, wrapping around them like a shroud. The handle twisted beneath her fingers, but no sooner had she touched it than the shadows lunged. They infiltrated her vision, the familiarity of their voices turning monstrous, distorting the memories she held dear. You've always known our call, something hissed, slithering into the cracks of her mind. Leave us alone, she screamed, tears streaming down her face, her breath shallow. She could feel Lily trembling beside her, fear flooding her small body, but she had to keep going. We are not yours. With a surge of strength, Sarah flung open the door and staggered into a harsh light that pierced through her fogged thoughts. It was like stepping into the sun after being trapped in the darkest night. The shadows screeched, a terrible cacophony of rage and loss erupting behind them as if the darkness itself had been wounded. They burst through the threshold, tumbling into what felt like a forgotten memory. It was Clover Hollow, but it shimmered every color brighter, the sun warmer. The familiar streets were empty, echoing with the laughter of childhood dreams long untouched. Here, the air smelled sweet, and the world felt alive. Mommy, Lily whispered, voice cracking as she clung tighter. But in that moment, Sarah faced a choice. The lingering call of the shadows could still be felt, curling around her thoughts like creeping vines. They wanted her back, needed her to join their realm of despair. No, she whispered fiercely, determination flooding through her. No more. You will not take my daughter. The fog of memories threatened to drown her, but she rooted herself to that moment, the warmth of sunlight on her skin, and the grip of her daughter's hand that grounded her. I remember, she stated firmly, drowning out the dark whispers. I remember love, I remember hope. The echoes that filled her mind began to unravel. Each lost memory that had tried to ensnare her failed to hold weight now that the light had broken through. With a final surge, she embraced her truth, pushing back against the grip of the shadows that clawed at her from the other side. The shadows howled, a monstrous roar of frustration, but in that moment, Sarah turned to the dimming door, sweeping it closed with finality. The light backlit her figure, a barrier sealing away the darkness, threading new hope into the fabric of her being. With a deep breath, Sarah knelt down to meet Lily's eyes, searching them for a flicker of fear. Did we do it? Are we safe? She asked, her heart racing but hope shining brighter than before. Lily nodded, tears streaking her cheeks but a smile pushing through as sunlight reflected in her eyes. We're okay, Mommy. Yes, Sarah affirmed, embracing her daughter tight. We are okay. We did it, together. And in that moment, beneath the endless sky, she felt a weight lift. Clover Hollow was still a small town smeared with secrets, but now it was also a sanctuary, an unyielding reminder that love could blaze, that hope could defy even the darkest shadows. They could heal, reclaiming their joy, not just from the memories of the past, but forever together. Now let us go find some ice cream, Sarah exclaimed, and laughter filled the air around them, sweet and bright like their love. They turned to walk away, hand in hand, ready to create new stories, forging a path ahead away from the darkness and into the light. The shadows behind the door raged against their absence, but it didn't matter. Some battles end, but love's fight never does, and not every tale in Clover Hollow needs to be a horror story. They found their way back home. Now, if you've enjoyed this roller coaster ride through terror and triumph, you need to subscribe immediately to our channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and tell the world about this epic conclusion. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about what could happen next. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this journey. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.